Good morning, Year 3. I'm so thrilled to have every single one of you joining me for today's reading lesson. And we're going to get straight into it, no faff today, because I'm feeling energetic. So, let's go through our pre-lesson checklist. If you're in Jade or Indigo group, you are with Mr. Goodall today. I did make a mistake yesterday. I thought you were going to be with Mr. Goodall, but you were actually with Miss Fernandez yesterday. But don't worry, today you are actually with Mr. Goodall. So go and watch his video. It's called Amber. You're also going to be doing reading comprehension, but you're just going to be with Mr. Goodall instead. We're splitting everyone up. If you're not in the Jade or the Indigo group, the first thing you need to do is go ahead and read to the end of chapter 8 of Evie in the Jungle. This is the chapter we started yesterday. We only read half of it yesterday, and then we did our predictions. Now we're going to see if anyone's predictions came true. So we're going to read to the end of the chapter. In a second, I'm going to show you what the beginning of the chapter looks like so that everyone can make sure that they read the correct chapter. Okay, so go ahead and pause this video and read to the end of this chapter. If you're back and you're watching this video again, it means you've already read to the end of chapter 8, so well done. That's the first thing down. The second thing is write the date and LI on your piece of paper. You should already have a pen and pencil ready because you know that you need one in every single lesson. So the date today is the 12th of May 2020, and the LI is to be able to answer a variety of comprehension questions. So we're starting to pull together all our comprehension knowledge. So pause the video now and write that down. Okay, so if you're with me, I'm hoping you're nice and ready for today's lesson. Today's lesson should be quite easy, and it's going to be quite short because I want to give you some extra time for your writing project this week. We're just going to be practicing some of the comprehension skills we already know and making sure that we are really solid on them. Before I go ahead and show you some of the best work from last week, I just want us to quickly think and recap. What are the types of comprehension questions that we already know? I think we've done 4 types of comprehension now. The first one you did yesterday as a practice. That is called prediction. So trying to give a good guess, a rational guess, as to what will most likely happen next. So we've already done one. We've done our prediction. The next type you're going to have a couple of practices of today. They're quite easy. They're called retrieval questions. And if you remember, the retrieval questions are the ones where the answer should be quite obvious. You should be able to find it straight away in the text. It's normally to do with something factual. And you're not normally guessing because you're actually just finding the information. There's only one right answer for retrieval questions. So you don't normally need to support your answer with examples from the text. There's only one answer. Those are retrieval questions. The last 2 questions are both types of inference questions. We started off by just doing normal inference questions. An inference, remember, means that you're kind of having to make a guess using a deduction. So you would have to deduce your answer based on the evidence or clues in the text. It's not normally obvious, and sometimes there could be more than one answer. But if you use your brain and you focus on what's actually in the text as evidence, you should be able to get to an answer that is acceptable. So those are the inference questions. Always support inference questions with your evidence from the text. And then recently we started doing the next level of inference questions, which are the ones where you also need to use your empathy. So you're still making a deduction, you're still looking at the text to help you find your answers. But sometimes you might just need to imagine what it would be like to be that character in order to understand the reasons, how they feel or why they did something. So these are inference questions where you also have to use empathy. And normally your answer for these questions will be very long because you would have to explain all your reasoning. You have to say what you think, you'd have to show your example from the text, and you need to give your reason for why you think that. What about the character, or what about the way they're feeling, or what about the story makes you think that? You need to give a lot of reasons. So, today we're going to be just doing a practice of using all those different skills in one set of comprehension questions. First of all, I want to show you some really great answers that were from the homework last Thursday. So, the question that I was most impressed by people's answers for is question number 4, and this was an inference plus empathy question. These 2 people gave fantastic answers because they explained their answers with such good reasoning and in such good detail. This one's from Ashvini. Let's read it together.
I think first she does not want to know anything about Evie because she smiled wearily as well as greeted them in quite a tired voice. In a quiet and tired voice. So here, Ashwini's given her thoughts. I think she does not want to know anything about Evie. And she's given an example from the text. So this is an action that Abigail Garcia did. She smiled wearily and greeted them in a quiet and tired voice. When Evie said, "It is an honour to meet you, Professor Garcia," when Evie said, "It is an honour to meet you," Professor Garcia replied, "Ugh," as if the words have maybe it means to say given her a headache. This also shows me that Professor Garcia is showing less interest in Evie. So we've got lots of examples, lots of deduction using clues from the text. And Ashwini is also using her own brain to guess at how those actions that Professor Garcia did might show her feelings. So maybe she's using her empathy to understand that Professor Garcia, when she says ugh, that's not a sign of a good ugh, it's a bad ugh. But Ashwini didn't stop her answer there, she's gone on. But once she recognised Evie's face of Nature magazine, she was excited because it says, the professor's eyes widened as she stared at Evie. So Ashwini's actually shown the whole spectrum of emotions that Professor Abigail Garcia has felt. She's shown how she first felt and how those feelings changed, which is a very good analysis of the text. And guess what, Ashwini? I think you're right. I think that is exactly how Professor Abigail Garcia's feelings changed. And the best thing about it is that Ashwini has always remembered to give an example of something from the story that made her think that, whether it's what a character did or what a character said or what the narration said about the character. This last bit is particularly good because she's given the quote from the text in inverted commas. So well done, Ashwini. So this second person also answered the question similarly well, but in a slightly different structure, and I thought it would be useful to hear his answer too. So this is from Hussein. How do you think Abigail Garcia feels about Evie? And he's written, I think Professor Abigail Garcia thinks that Evie is important. There is two reasons why I think this. First reason is they both love animals and Evie can communicate with animals. The second reason is, in the story it says that Professor Abigail has kept a magazine in her desk about Evie. So, Hussein's taken a slightly different tactic. He's just thought about, at the end of the chapter, how does Professor Abigail Garcia feel about Evie? He hasn't actually looked necessarily at all the stuff Ashwini did about the beginning when Abigail Garcia wasn't that excited to see her. But that's fine, okay? Because he's still given a really good answer backed up with evidence. Remember, in an inference question, it's based on your opinion. There's not always a correct answer, but you can still get the marks so long as you've supported your answer really well and you've persuaded me that you have a very valid opinion based on real evidence and real clues. So, Hussein has done two things. He's given two reasons about why he thinks Professor Abigail Garcia thinks Evie is important. The first reason, he's used his empathy to figure out. Okay, so there is evidence from the text that Evie and Abigail Garcia both love animals, but he's used his own empathy to understand that two people who like the same thing might both like each other because they would have something in common. That was a really good use of empathy, understanding the characters and trying to feel how they would feel. The second reason, he's done a deduction because he's based it more directly on something that he's read in the story. And he's actually shown us that it's evidence from the text because he said, in the story, it says that Professor Abigail has kept a magazine in her desk about Evie. So I thought this was another example of fantastic answer. Well done, Hussein. And I want everybody in today's exercise, when you're answering inference questions or empathy in inference questions, really explain your answer in as much detail as you can. Use as much evidence from the text as you can, and try to really think and use your empathy where necessary to flesh out your answers and add those reasons that maybe aren't in the text, but you can deduce from the text. Okay, so now I'm going to do one example of answering a question with you that's a really tricky question, just to help you understand how you might answer a tricky question. And that's my example question at the top, and then on your own you're going to do these 5 questions at the bottom at the end of this video. So my question asks, what did Evie mean when she said, it was getting a bit much at home? And at the beginning of the question, it's already told me it's an inference and empathy. So I know the answer's not going to be obvious. I might have to do a deduction, and I'm really going to have to try and get inside the head of the character and use my empathy to explain her feelings. So, first thing I need to do is find the bit in the story where it says, it was getting a bit much at home. Now, because I've already read this,
like you. I know this was near to the beginning of the chapter, so have a look. Here, it says, "It was getting a bit much at home, so we came here," she said. "I want to feel hopeful again." Now, there's nothing before that really tells me how she was feeling. This is just her talking to Neruda. And there's nothing really afterwards where she explains what she means when she says it was getting a bit much at home. So there's not really a clue in this section of the text. However, I can use my brain to think, what could Evie mean when she said it was getting a bit much at home? I'll have to think about what was happening at home to use my deduction. Well, I remember that when Evie was last at home, that is when all those paparazzi people and photographers and journalists were taking photos of her. And I can actually go all the way back to the beginning of the story and find out if I can find any examples for the text when it says this, or when she talks about being at home. So, oh yeah, I remember now. It said, "There were thousands of strangers on the internet calling her a freak, so Evie had been locking herself in her bedroom and reading." So, when she's saying it was getting a bit much at home, I can make the guess, based on this evidence from the text, that Evie was feeling overwhelmed by all the paparazzi and photographers and journalists who were chasing her, and by all the people on the internet being mean to her. So,
I think that, remember we always start inference answers with "I think that." Evie, when Evie said, so I'm answering their full sentence, when Evie said it was getting a bit much at home, she meant that she was feeling overwhelmed, and this is my empathy kicking in to help me explain how she's feeling, because of all the attention she was getting from being famous.
For example, in the story, so here I'm not using a direct example from the text, but I am paraphrasing or summarising something that's happened. So in the story, there were thousands, actually I don't know if it was thousands, I probably shouldn't say that. There were loads of
journalists and photographers surrounding her house, and
now I can use a quote. There were thousands of strangers
on the internet calling her a freak.
So it's quite a long answer you can see here, but I do need to include all this information, otherwise I would not have answered the question very thoroughly. Okay, I forgot to say "I think this because." Now remember, I should say that because I need to show how I'm linking my thoughts to the evidence from the text. So instead of saying, for example, in the story, I can say, "I think this because in the story there were loads of journalists and photographers surrounding her house, and there were thousands of strangers on the internet calling her a freak." So now that is a really good answer. So when you write your answers, if it's an inference question or an inference or an empathy question, you might have to really think in your head where you can find that evidence. If it's not in the chapter that you're reading, it might be related to another part of the story. And sometimes you don't always need to give evidence from the text, like an exact quotation. Sometimes you can just summarise something that's happened or give evidence explaining something that's happened. But when you can use a direct quote, it's much better because it shows that you've really paid close attention to what you're reading. So good luck answering these 5 questions. I'm going to put them up on a screen in a minute, and you can pause the video and answer each of them looking at the story as you go. Good luck! Pause the video now to complete your answers. And don't forget to email your work in.